Everybody's been saying, where has beast mode been?
In that YB house.
Work hard and play harder.
And that's just the goal with the Sharp Football Analysis podcast, is to discover and uncover new ways to analyze football, and then share that information and disseminate that material in an easy to understand manner. And then at that point, all you got to do is let the Marshawn Lynch principle take over. Yeah, that is, when we do it so constantly, so frequently, and so repetitively, and so accurately, even those who hate analytics, even the cynics and the skeptics, it just will click in their mind that they're so worn down and frustrated they will have to sit down and listen to reason. And that is the Marshawn Lynch principle. Because like he says,
if you just run through somebody's face, a lot of people ain't gonna be able to take that over and 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 over again. They just not gonna want that.
Think there's a deeper metaphor there?
Run through a face, then you don't have to worry about them no more.
I feel like beast mode every day, man.
welcome to the Week 11 early preview. My name is Warren Sharp of SharpFootballAnalysis.com and SharpFootballStats.com. We're going to be joined on this podcast by Evan Silva of RotoWorld.com. And this podcast, as it always is on Monday night that I'm recording this after the Monday Night Football game, is going to take a large portion of it from the Sharp Football Show, which is a 30-minute analytics-based pregame show that I do live on Periscope every single Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can see that show by simply following me on Twitter at Sharp Football. I have live graphics packages, slides that we go through to help demonstrate some of these points to you and hopefully allow them to sink deeper into your brain for use for the upcoming week and better understanding of what we just saw. You can follow me on Twitter at Sharp Football to see that. You can follow Evan on Twitter at Evan Silva. We'll both retweet it. Evan's going to come on the podcast later on as part of that show. And we got a lot of great topics that we're going to discuss. A lot of really interesting information out there. Going to be talking momentarily about Sean Lee and his absence, as well as Ezekiel Elliott and his absence from the Dallas Cowboys. Going to be talking about the Denver defense, what's happened to them, but where they will go from here in terms of a projection for the rest of the year. The New Orleans Saints, how they've been doing what they've been doing and what the rest of the year holds for them, as well as the Buffalo Bills and their completely perplexing decision-making from a play calling perspective. We're going to talk about another coach who screwed up royally with some of his play calling, Jay Gruden. We're going to talk about the Minnesota Vikings and their quarterback dilemma the rest of the season, what that projects for them, and what they could do with their decision making. And then we're also going to hit on the Jacksonville versus LA Chargers game. We're going to discuss the game. We're going to discuss the matchups, as well as discuss some issues with Jacksonville for the rest of the year, with the Chargers for the rest of the year, and several other topics as we will continue the interview with Evan Silva at the end. So a lot of really good stuff that we're going to get into. Before we dig into a couple things I want to talk about off the top and transition into the Sharp Football Show, I do want to give you one quick announcement. Over at SharpFootballAnalysis.com, this week I'm doing a free preview week for the NFL. You can get the recommendations as well as the write-ups that I'm going to be giving to clients for the NFL. You can preview those just for this week and just for the NFL games this week, because I do college football as well. All you have to do is go over to SharpFootballAnalysis.com, click on the Purchase tab, and you'll see, grab that package, check out with it. You have to put it in there for, I think I've made it 1 cent, so that you could actually conduct a transaction so that you're part of the list that's going to get the emails every time games are recommended to clients, and pre-release emails and actual game recommendations, so that you know exactly when this game is coming out, and then you can get the game as well. So I only do that once a year, just for 1 week. just for a few days out of that week. So it's on right now. If you want to go check it out, feel free to do that. sharpfootballanalysis.com. Now, two topics that I wanted to discuss. The first one relates to an NFC team, and that's the New Orleans Saints. And this team is built to win on the road. I sort of mentioned this before last week in the Sharp Football Analysis podcast, which I record late Friday night, comes out Saturday mornings. But you could tell by the structure of this team, the way that they play good run offense, the way that they play good pass defense, this is a team that can travel. This is not a team that needs to rely on Drew Brees as much as it has had to in the past. They're going to be a very strong contender to win games on the road. But here's one thing that's really going to help them the rest of this year. Check out their schedule, which I will update at sharpfootballstats.com on Tuesday night, later on Tuesday evening, to update all the new strength of schedule metrics with future projections. But if you look at simply their venues that they're going to play, they only play in 2 non-dome games the rest of the year. So they've got 7 games, but only 2 of them will be played outdoors. Guess where they're being played? One is in sunny LA. That's not going to have it very difficult the rest of this year in terms of environmental conditions. They're going to be really able to play whatever it is style that they need to play. They don't have to worry about the cold. They don't have to worry about precipitation, most likely. Guess what? If they can continue what they're doing in the NFC, it's highly, highly competitive. It's a highly competitive conference. But New Orleans right now is 7-2. Here's their schedule. They host the Redskins. They go to LA to play the Rams. Very tough game. They come back and host these Panthers. That game looks a lot tougher after what we just saw tonight. Atlanta twice, the Jets and the Bucks. This is a team that very easily could be looking at maybe 1 to 2 more losses, in which case we're talking about a team 12-4. That could be good enough in the NFC to lock up home field. It's a potential. I mean, right now this is if you look at the playoff standings, this is a playoff team. They would be hosting their first game. The goal for the Saints is to host games in the playoffs, get that home field advantage, dome, sweet dome, and bring all their opponents back there. So it is going to be tough. You can look ahead and you can see that the game that they're going to play, the LA Rams, is absolutely going to be massive because you got 2 7-2 teams battling it out. And that's week 12, not this week, but next week. It's in LA. That probably could be the game that decides home field advantage, in all honesty. I mean, we'll see. There's still a lot of the year left to be played. That's the good part about the NFL, is it seems like we're hitting the home stretch, and we are, but there's still a ton of football left to be played, and a lot of things can happen. So it's gonna be fascinating. But that is one team from the NFC that really has their run game going. Run games can travel in the postseason, so if they aren't able to make it through in terms of their home field advantage, they've got a run game that is capable of traveling. And if you look at the lay of the land in the NFC, and you look at where the teams are in terms of the better teams, I mean, the only team that really would throw a wrench into the plans would be the Philadelphia Eagles. They may have to go to Philadelphia in the postseason because Philly's sitting there at 8-1. But other than that, here's the teams that are slated, the top 8 teams, let's say. The top 8. Obviously, 6 make the playoffs. The Vikings, they're in a dome. The Saints, they're in a dome. The Rams are in LA. Seattle is obviously in the Pacific Northwest. So lots of different things can happen there. Probably no snow, but snow is generally the least of your worries when you're talking about can a team produce. If there is weather, if it could be heavy rain or something like that, they get that certainly in Seattle. Carolina, and then you've got Atlanta and Detroit. So of those top 8 teams, 4 of them are in a dome. One's in LA, one's in Carolina, one's in Philadelphia, and one's in Seattle. So still opportunity to have to play outdoors, but there's a lot of chances that your playoff path could go through some domes. The Detroit Lions and potentially the Carolina Panthers, we'll see what they've got there, but the Detroit Lions and the Seattle Seahawks, those are the two teams in the NFC that don't really run the football very well, who are potentially playoff teams. Detroit and Seattle. The Eagles just added Jay Ajayi. I don't like Jay Ajayi, but they're getting the run game going, especially with their style of their offense. Minnesota Vikings can run adequately. The Saints certainly can. The Rams certainly have been able to. The Atlanta Falcons certainly can. Carolina, if they're able to continue this, maybe this is just a blip because they played the Miami Dolphins, but we'll see. But there's only two teams that really can't run the football too well in the NFC right now, to our potential playoff teams. Speaking of running the football, let's switch to the other conference, the New England Patriots. I tweeted this out earlier the other day. The top players in terms of success rate in the NFL right now, running the football. Okay, running backs, running the football. Number one player, Rex Burkhead. Actually, I'm sorry, this is passes and runs. Say, any running back, just looking at all the plays that they have. Number one, Rex Burkhead. Number two, Mike Gillislee. Number three, Dion Lewis. Number four, James White. We are literally talking about 4 New England Patriots running backs who are the top 4 players in success rate. 57%, 56, 54, and 54. They're so diverse. They're so multiple with what they can do on the ground. And they can interchange these guys. And they each have their own role. So I don't want to say that like Mike Gillislee can do what Rex Burkhead does or James White does. That's kind of crazy, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just simply suggesting that Tom Brady can get the ball to a running back, whether he's split out wide, whether he's behind him, handing the ball off to him, pitching the ball. They can do a lot of variety of different things with their running backs, and they're going to get a discernible, repeatable success rate from these guys that's the best in the league. That is such a luxury if you're Tom Brady in the New England Patriots offense, because you can always pass the ball. You can hit your tight end, you can hit your wide receivers. Obviously, they lost some of their receivers, so having these running backs fill that role is massive for this team. And it's one of the reasons why they're so hard to defend. They just really are. They'll scheme different things up. Just watch when they go down and play in Azteca on Sunday afternoon down in Mexico City. That game is going to be exciting to watch. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the game that we just saw, the Carolina Panthers versus the Miami Dolphins. Carolina absolutely trucked the Dolphins, that I'm sure. The passing was relatively even, except for the yards per attempt. Carolina hit a couple larger passes. Jay Cutler threw an interception. But the rushing is where it was at. The Carolina Panthers went into this game as if they couldn't run the football. They couldn't run the football all year long. They really struggled at running the football, which is odd to think this type of Carolina Panthers team. I mean, you've got Cam Newton and you still have Jonathan Stewart. How are you guys unable to run the football as well? Now, they've had some injuries to the offensive line, but 8.2 yards per carry, almost 300 yards, 6 yards shy of 300, 294 rushing yards compared to 100 for the Miami Dolphins, and most of those came on a massive breakaway run for a touchdown. It was a great performance at home. What do we know about Cam Newton? He is a front runner, and when things start going well, then the Carolina Panthers are set up in good shape for the rest of the game. And of course, they get up in this game 10-0, and that's when Cam can really, they're in the second quarter and they're up 10-0. Cam is going to be dancing, and most of the time that dancing will not stop until the end of the game. Even if the defense brings the momentum back a little bit, Cam can get something like that back. But most typically, they took a 17-7 lead into the half, scoring at the very end of the first half with 19 seconds left. I mean, you knew the second half was set up for a landslide. And of course, that's what they do. They scored 2 touchdowns in the second half's first 7 minutes, in the first 7 minutes of the third quarter. And then the route is on. I mean, it's 31-7 at that point. And good night to the Miami Dolphins. Jay Cutler didn't play a horrible game, but their defense was just horrendous. And Carolina's got a really good defense. Carolina has a really good defense, especially with Luke Kuechly healthy. I saw somebody on Twitter was talking about, imagine if Sean Lee, you could give him the powers of being immune to injury, how he would look compared to Luke Kuechly. I mean, those two guys, just great players, huge difference makers for their team. And one thing actually I'll mention that I didn't get a chance to talk about in the show tonight was the absence of a couple of key defensive tackles. People don't think about that enough when they're looking at the run game, but you tell me, you look at Buffalo's run defense the last couple of weeks without Marcel Darius in there. This run defense has looked significantly worse without Marcel Darius in there. And look at the run defense of the Washington Redskins. They had a rookie starting for them, Jonathan Allen. They drafted him from the Alabama Crimson Tide. He was a rookie, but a great defensive tackle. And they lost him a couple of weeks ago, and their run defense has been getting gashed as well. So defensive tackles do play a big role when teams are trying to run the ball against you, and their injuries can't be overestimated. Now, in this case, Ndamukong Suh is there for the Miami Dolphins, yet that team was just not playing good defense. And unfortunately, that's what we've been seeing from some of these teams, just give up defensively. And we see it more in defense because that's where you have to have that effort. You don't know what's going to happen. Offense, you know what's going to happen, so you can kind of mentally get ahead of it and get prepared for what you're about to do. Defensively, you're just reacting, and it takes focus as well as effort. And it's very evident when a team and defense is quit for the game or potentially quit on their team. So at any rate, let's go ahead and jump into the show tonight. Great show. A lot of good topics that we're going to cover. The first segment, to Lee or not to Lee. Obviously, this is Sean Lee. And Sean Lee, a major factor for the Dallas Cowboys defense. If you guys don't know that, by now I'm sure you know. You saw the game yesterday. He was a big reason why this team struggled as much as they did in that game. And we're going to go ahead and discuss exactly what happened there. So with Sean Lee, he was there basically for most of the first quarter. They had a 31% success rate, did the Dallas Cowboys defense. They held the offense of the Atlanta Falcons to just a 31% success rate, 3.7 yards per play, 3 total points on 2 drives. And obviously that's pretty big. But he went out after that. You could say small sample size, but we've seen this before, and we'll get into that in a second in terms of other weeks that this has occurred as well. Without Sean Lee in quarters 2 through 4, the Atlanta Falcons had a 53% success rate, 5.6 yards per play, and 24 points on basically 6 drives. They took out the quick little drive they had at the end of the first half, as well as the drive where basically they kneeled down at the end of the game. So forgive me for excluding those. I think this justified massive difference with and without Sean Lee. Now, he was out obviously for weeks 4 and 5 as well. And if you roll all these weeks up, whether you even look at rushing or passing success rate, it didn't really matter. This defense allowed 54% success on run plays and pass plays. And with Sean Lee, the rest of the weeks, a 46% success rate and on rushing or passing. Again, didn't really matter. So Sean Lee makes a massive difference for this defense. Now you could say, well, that doesn't look like that much. Well, we're talking about generally over hundreds of plays. Well, in the case without him, it's probably literally 100 plays maybe. But in the other case, we're talking about hundreds of plays. What does this 54% represent? If you think that doesn't sound bad, well, if you looked at the course of the entire NFL, a 54% success rate allowed would have been worse than the 32nd ranked run defense of the Kansas City Chiefs or the 32nd ranked pass defense of the New England Patriots. So the worst by far in the NFL without Sean Lee. And we'll see what happens. I mean, I read on Roto-World just this evening that they said he might be missing 3 games potentially. They've got this game next week, and then they have a short turnaround for their game on Thursday. So if he misses that game as well, and I don't know about the third game after that, but that's a massive loss, not having Sean Lee in there. All right. Next up. You guys, let's see what's going on here. Okay, there we go. We're back. Zeke the Destroyer. Now, we covered this topic once earlier. Ezekiel Elliott. We use the same exact header, Zeke the Destroyer. With and without Ezekiel Elliott. First down success rate. And a lot of people, this was going to the factor that a lot of people were talking about, hey, why don't we, what's the big deal without Zeke? He's only worth a point. It's not a big deal to the spread. It defines what the Cowboys are capable of doing offensively. And, we probably, in hindsight, should have been higher on the Atlanta Falcons going into this game. But I think one thing with Tyron Smith missing that game made a big difference as well. And we'll talk about that in a second. But without Ezekiel Elliott there, I mean, it's major. Look at the first down success. This is where Ezekiel Elliott is so good on first downs at converting successful plays on first down. That means getting at least 40% of the yards to go to keep your offense on schedule. He has a 58% success rate weeks 1 to 9. Last week, without him, a 36% success rate. That is a massive drop-off, 22% drop-off on first down success rate. Teams are not going to be able to overcome that. They are just simply not going to be able to overcome that. There's other factors that he plays into besides just when he carries the ball on first down. His pass protection, his receiving skills out of the backfield, and his short yardage rushing. All of those things are also a factor even when he's not out on the field carrying the ball on first down. So the other issue, as we just mentioned, Tyron Smith, missing Zeke was even more critical because the Cowboys obviously had to drop back more. They had to throw more passes because their run game, as we just mentioned, at 36% success, was not getting enough yards on first down. So they had to throw the ball more, and they're dropping back without their left tackle. And we saw this. I should have put a slide in here, Jason Garrett's questionable play calling of the week, because why would he not help out this left tackle? I mean, it was absolutely absurd the amount of times that left tackle was getting pressure and was just getting destroyed and was blowing up the entire game plan of the Dallas Cowboys offense, and yet Jason Garrett makes no adjustments to that and lets that persist and continue. So that was stupid, but hopefully they'll fix that for next week. But you can't be dropping back as much as Dak was and not have Tyron Smith out there without helping him. It's just not feasible to have any type of success that way. The Denver Broncos defense. I tweeted about this last night, but take a look at this. Over the last 2 weeks, 23 drives, 12 of them, that's 52%, were converted into touchdowns. That is the worst rate in the entire NFL. This defense is allowing 52% touchdowns. That means it doesn't even matter where the drive starts from. They could be kicking off to the opponent's 10-yard line. 52% of the drives are getting touchdowns against this team. They've allowed 3 punts. They forced only 3 punts. It was only 13% of drives did they force a punt on. And then, no, it's not coming from their recording a ton of takeaways. They've only recorded 1 takeaway. 13%, that's 31st in the league. And 1 takeaway at 4% of the drives ended in a takeaway, that's 30th in the league. Now compare that to weeks 1 through 4 of the season, back when this defense was crushing opponents. 47 drives, 17% touchdowns. Now they're at 52%. 45% of those drives ended in punts. Now they're at 13%. And double the amount of takeaways in terms of frequency of drives ending. Now, they obviously have played 2 good offensive opponents the last couple of weeks. The Kansas City Chiefs and the New England Patriots. Fortunately for Denver, they have the 11th easiest schedule of opposing offenses over the course of the rest of the season. And let's take a look at that and look exactly. This is another image straight out of Sharp Football Stats. And if you guys can't see that, I'll just try to bring this down here and let you take a look. What you've got here is you've got the strength of opposing teams with the teams down at the bottom, meaning they've got better offenses. And you can see where they are at this point in the season. They just took care of the New England Patriots, and they lost that game, and they lost it pretty badly. But from that point onward, they got a bad offense of the Cincinnati Bengals, Miami Dolphins, New York Jets, and Indianapolis Colts. These four teams right here are worse than any offense that they faced thus far on the year. So I definitely think that we're going to get some better success out of the Denver Broncos here moving forward throughout the course of the rest of the season in terms of the way that they look and the way that they perform. But I don't feel like it's going to be, it could be enough, but their offense is going to have to improve. That offense is going to have to get significantly better. All right, the New Orleans Saints. I think this is one of the biggest stories of the year. The New Orleans Saints go marching on. Now, New Orleans, totally dominant performance. Evan, who's going to be coming up here soon, said that it looked like the Buffalo Bills didn't even belong out there on the field with them. And that was 100% true. But I want to go ahead and tell you a little bit more about the Saints, because a lot of people right now have this impression that the Saints are a complete run-heavy team. They've completely shied away from the pass because they were so pass-heavy. That's not entirely accurate. Let's just look at the numbers. In one-score games on early downs, why do you look at early downs? Well, you look at early downs because third down, teams are playing to how much yards they have to go. So third and long, they're going to be throwing the ball. It doesn't really matter what the score is unless we're talking about the very end of the fourth quarter. So it's really irrelevant to look at what a team's rate is on third down. It really basically depends on how far they have to go. So at any rate, in one-score games on early downs, in 2016, they were 59% pass, which was the second most in the NFL. Sorry, 2016, second most in the NFL. In 2017, they're 51% pass. Now, 51% pass sounds like a massive drop-off, and it is, especially from second most in the NFL. Definitely massive. But it's not as if they're even running the ball at average. The average is actually 51%. And you can see on this graphic, another one that you can find up at sharpfootballstats.com, the New Orleans Saints were right up here in 2016. Second most pass-heavy team in neutral situations on early downs. Here's where they are right now. And the league average is 50% runs at this point in time. 50% of the play calls on early downs in one-score games are runs. They were at 51%. So definitely running the ball a lot more, but still being extremely balanced. They're not going completely run heavy. They're getting run heavy when the game's out of reach. So they're still passing the ball just above average in these situations. Let's look at the Buffalo Bills, though, because this game, the Bills looked like crap, but we cannot ignore some of the coaching and the decision-making that this team did. First of all, in the first quarter, it was 0-0 to start the first quarter, obviously. They were down 7-3 by the end of the first quarter. They're in this game. LaShawn McCoy runs the ball 5 times, 9.6 yards per carry. And no, it's not just one 60-yard run followed by a few 3-yard runs. He's recording a 60% success rate. 60% success rate. Tyrod Taylor, another guy who I thought was going to have a big impact into this game because of his running and because the New Orleans Saints defense has not faced a pocket passing quarterback who also is mobile out of the pocket. They faced a ton of statuesque pocket passing quarterbacks. Tyrod Taylor obviously is not part of that. Tyrod, 1 rush for 13 yards, and he had 100% success on that play. Let's look at what they did in the entirety of the first half. In the entirety of the first half, obviously they into the second quarter, they were down 7-3. They ended up being down 17-3 at halftime. But look at these numbers. 7 rushes at this point in time for LaShawn McCoy, 7.3 yards per carry, and a 57% success rate. Those are wickedly good numbers, extremely, extremely good numbers. Tyrod Taylor, 2 rushes, 10 yards per carry, 100% success rate. Tyrod Taylor's passing, 13 attempts, 3.7 yards per attempt, and a 38% success rate. Now, I'm pretty good at math, but it doesn't take somebody who's good at math to realize that you're getting more yards per carry and a much better success rate if you run the ball than pass the ball. I understand that the league thinks, and it's true on average, hey, if we throw the ball, we're getting more yards per carry. So why don't we throw the ball? That's better for our offense, especially when we're down. But the reality is when you're posting these kinds of numbers, that's completely inaccurate. And look at what happens in the second half. After they do this in the first half, whoops, skipped ahead here, fellas. I apologize. Somehow I went to the end of the slideshow. Hold on. Okay, that's what they did in the first half. This is what they do in the second half. 1 rush for LaShawn McCoy, 1 rush for Tyrod Taylor. I mean, there's no words. There's no words for this level of inept play calling from the Buffalo Bills. Keep in mind, LaShawn McCoy's, we know how Ingram and Kamara destroyed them. Okay, we know how Ingram and Kamara destroyed the Bills defense. LaShawn McCoy's first half yards per carry was better than Mark Ingram's and was better than Kamara's. He was better. And yet they gave him 1 carry. LaShawn's success rate was 50% better than Tyrod Taylor's success rate when they passed the ball. I mean, just mind-boggling how stupid the Buffalo Bills play calling was. They're down 17-3. Their defense is getting gashed. What would you want to do? Would you want to throw the ball a lot with Tyrod Taylor in the second half and get no yards and then let the offense of the Saints come on the field and truck your defense once again? Or wouldn't you want to try to control the clock, keep Drew Brees on the sideline in that run game, let your defense rest, and continue to operate your offense in a game that's still within reach at the start of the second half? I mean, there's just no words. Now, let's look at the Saints' schedule here. Well, we can see this with the Saints' schedule, and yes, it does. It makes too much sense, and I just don't understand what coaches are doing. But here's one thing. These are the rushing offenses that the Saints are going to face. Absolutely, the Saints run D well below average. But here's what we're going to talk about. The Saints rushing offenses that they're going to face. Okay, they're going to get progressively more difficult for the Saints defense, right? We're right in this area. The Buffalo Bills are right here. Redskins next week. We're going to talk about the Redskins in a second. No, not their run game, just not happening. But the Rams, Panthers, forget about them too. The Rams, the Falcons, the Jets, the Falcons, they're going to face more difficult run opponents against this defense. Still not that strong. And yes, it is real. But look at the rushing efficiency of the defenses that they're going to face. Okay? This is why they're still going to be successful. Look at this schedule where they've been. This is where they've been in the past against these run defenses, all really good run defenses. Look at who they're going to face. I mean, this run offense, if you've got a piece of them in fantasy, hold on to that tight because this run offense is in a really good position. Yes, they've got a tough schedule against the Carolina Panthers down here. Apart from that, the Redskins a little bit more difficult, but they got some easy sailing as opposed to what they've just faced. All right, before we get into the next thing, I want to go ahead and give you guys 2 quick announcements. If any of you guys are following me on the VSiN stuff that I do with Evan and Bill Krakenberger every single Thursday, probably not going to be on the show this week. If any of you guys are of the praying variety, my daughter is having a couple of surgical procedures on Thursday morning. That's when we usually do the show. So feel free to send one up for her, but that's on Thursday. So we'll be at the hospital most of the morning. Not going to be able to do the show. The other thing on this week is I tend to try to do this once a year, but this week we're going to let you guys get a free access into the NFL recommendations. Now, last couple of weeks have not been very good, but year to date is still successful, and we've got this week is 1 cent basically. I tried to do it for free, but you have to actually pay a cent to get onto the email list and that sort of thing. So if you go to sharpfootballanalysis.com, go to the purchase tab, you can see all the NFL recommendations. You can see my the way that I release games, the write-ups that I include with the games, and get a sense of that. That's free for this week. So feel free to go ahead and check that out. This next one is mind-boggling to me once again. We just talked about the Buffalo Bills. This one is really frustrating to me. Gruden and his decision-making, because he's already cost the Redskins a game. We won't say that they officially would have won that game, but he really helped them lose that game in Kansas City on Monday Night Football by calling that timeout when the Redskins had the ball. And for you guys watching, most of you guys probably know the play that I'm talking about. He did it again this week. He screwed up again here. Here's the key sequence. Let's look at the game reset. The Redskins are down by 11. There's 5 minutes left. They have the ball on the Vikings' 33-yard line, and it's 3rd and 1. Okay? So they obviously need 2 scores. It's 3rd down. You have 1 yard to go. The prior three plays on this drive, the most immediate 3, a Chris Thompson run followed by 2 Chris Thompson passes. Now, it's the 4th quarter. Chris Thompson's been going up against this very difficult and physical Vikings defense. He's a little bit worn down. He's, 190 pounds, sopping wet? I mean, he's very light. What does Jay Gruden call on 3rd and 1 at the Minnesota 33? A Chris Thompson run. No yards on 3rd and 1. Short yardage, they use Chris Thompson. On 4th and 1, another run by Chris Thompson. They need 2 scores. Their field goal kicker is capable of making this field goal. What are you doing with 5 minutes left, having your lightweight receiving running back carry the ball 2 times in a row? I mean, this is prime Kirk Cousins sneak time. I mean, this is something right up the gut. This is not Chris Thompson time. Now, what happens on the next possession? The Redskins kick a field goal from the Minnesota 37. They were just on the 33 to kick, and they could have kicked a field goal, but they didn't. Now they went to the 37, and they tried to kick a field goal. And they make that field goal, but they only have 1 minute and 20 left. So then what happens? Washington gets the ball back. They get to the Minnesota 23-yard line, but because they needed 2 scores at that time, this is before they kicked the field goal, what they do on 1st down is they take a deep shot. What they do on 2nd down is they take another deep shot because they need 2 scores. And then they have to settle for the field goal with 1 minute and 20 seconds left. When in reality, if they had kicked the field goal with 5 minutes left and then had the ball on the Minnesota 23-yard line, they very easily, 1st and 10 at the 23 with 1 minute and 20 left, the whole playbook is open. You need a touchdown. You don't need 2 scores. So by refusing to kick the field goal earlier and giving up those 3 points, he put the team in a situation late where they needed 2 scores and were completely screwed with all these deep shots. It just miserable from the Redskins play calling. And let's talk about the Vikings offense real quick, because the Minnesota Vikings are extremely, extremely strong. I mean, look at these defenses that the Minnesota Vikings have faced. These defenses have been extremely good across the board. Now, they face some good defenses down the stretch here. Up next is the Rams defense, very good. The Lions, the Panthers also very good. We'll see them tonight momentarily. I'm just not sure. We're going to ask Evan about the decision with Teddy Bridgewater and what they're going to do there, but it's playing with fire. If you stick him in and it doesn't work out, and then you're wondering, well, do we keep him in here and let him keep trying to adjust to it, or do we go back to Case? I mean, you're playing with fire in that situation, and I'm really worried about what they're going to do if they put Teddy in and he doesn't completely tear it up, because these are some difficult defenses to play. So I agree with you guys. I would not mess with the chemistry personally. It's very difficult. I know that Teddy has the bigger upside, but I don't know. I don't really want to put him in there and risk him not playing well right now, because then what happens? I think that's the situation you're in, and it's not a good alternative. Quickly about the Jacksonville Jaguars penalties. This is a team that under Tom Coughlin, his leadership, I'm shocked that this is going on, and I'm guessing it's going to end pretty quickly. But these guys almost cost themselves this game just thanks to penalties. On 4 of their 5 drives in the 4th quarter before they kicked a field goal, Do you guys realize that on 4 of their 5 drives, they had a penalty on those drives? We're talking about they're playing offense at this time. And 4 out of the 5 drives, they have a penalty. That is just terrible. Terrible to have a penalty every single drive. Here's a big one. 2nd and 10. Let's look at the reset. 1:38 left, and they're down by 3. Bortles throws this ball down to Marquise Lee. And I'm laughing just picturing in my head because I watched the replays of this just before I recorded. We're doing this show. The dance that Marquise Lee did. I mean, it was. So he thinks that they're throwing a flag for illegal contact, or I think they actually called it for unnecessary roughness because he got nailed in the end zone. The refs end up conversing and pick up the flag. But before they do that, Marquise Lee goes up to the defender who supposedly hits him and starts doing this dance right in his face. And then they throw another flag. And so instead of offsetting, they say, hey, that was not actually unnecessary roughness, but that obviously was taunting. So they back them up 15 yards. I mean, you're in scoring position to begin with. And then they return this interception to the 2-yard line. Okay, great field position. And what does Alvin Colvin do? He goes out and starts taunting Phillip Rivers, like dancing right in his face, and I think pointing at him. And then they get 15-yard penalty, and their field goal is almost blocked. Now, here's what I would do if I ever get the ball in overtime at the 2-yard line, and I don't have like the best offensive line in the league. I am pounding that ball in to the end zone via the run. I'm quarterback sneaking it once or twice. I'm handing it off to my fullback. I am pounding that ball in from the 2-yard line, and if I can't get it in, no big deal. I'll settle for the field goal. But there is no chance in today's NFL, the way that these kickers are, that I'm just going to simply kneel on the ball and just risk a field goal kick and put my whole team's fate in that sort of thing. So I really would never do that. I would always try to just pound it in if I'm on the 2-yard line. But at any rate, those penalties are stupid, and they have to clean them up, especially if they're going to try to compete with teams that they're not quite as good as talent-wise in the playoffs. Now, one last thing on Anthony Lynn. This is Anthony, Rivers passes by downs. Let's look at this. What is his success rate against a very tough Jacksonville Jaguars defense, which I said in the pregame stuff, everything we did this week, that you need to avoid 3rd down passes against this Jacksonville defense. They're the best in the NFL. 57% success rate on 1st down passes. This is in the first half, okay? 63% success rate on 2nd down passes, and 20% success rate on 3rd down passes. If you're the Chargers, when do you want to be throwing the football? Especially if you want to convert 3rd downs. I can tell you what, you don't want to be throwing the football on 3rd down. So what's a great way to avoid throwing the football on 3rd down? How about throwing the football on 1st and 2nd down, where you're crushing this defense with efficiency? First half, 1st downs. Melvin Gordon, 4 runs, 2.3 yards per carry, and a 25% success rate. Phillip Rivers, 7 passes, 7.6 yards per attempt, and a 57% success rate. Once again, what are you guys doing with Melvin Gordon? We've been saying this for weeks. This has to have gotten to the LA Chargers. I know the former center, Nick Hardwick, he follows me on Twitter. He's retweeted some of this stuff. He announces their games out there. He announces their games. He's the color analyst for the Chargers on the radio network. He's been saying the same sort of stuff on his broadcasts. The Chargers know this. I have no idea what Anthony Lynn is doing. The Chargers know everything we're saying here. The guy they're ignoring, the horse, Hunter Henry. Now, I'm just so frustrated with the Chargers offense right now. I'm convinced that the only time they're actually going to play more efficient football is once they're out of playoff contention. So I actually hope that they drop a couple of games so that we can actually see them play efficient football. Pass more to Hunter Henry, run more with Austin Eckler, who's been crushing it. Get rid of Melvin Gordon. Do not give Gordon another contract. It would be ridiculous for them to do that. But once again, there's no coincidences with regard to this team and their performances. It's just when you're not throwing the ball to Hunter Henry, you're losing. They know that. I don't understand what they're trying to do, trying to prove a point that we can win with him. I'm not sure, but let's go ahead and try to get Evan Silva on the line here.
Warren, you got me?
I got you, Evan.
What's up, man? How you doing?
What's up, buddy? We are doing great.
Good.
Let's bring this mic up, guys. Say hello to Evan. Evan, so are you in the steakhouse or outside of the steakhouse, or where are you right now?
No, I'm gonna head up there in about 20 minutes.
All right, so Evan definitely deserves a good steak every Monday night after a long week of work, and we all do, guys. We all do, but at least Evan is kind enough to himself to treat himself to one. So, Evan, let's go ahead and break it down like we normally do on the show. This game looks like it just started. It's 12 minutes left in the first quarter. But what's one of the matchups that you're going to be looking for in this game tonight, where we've got the Miami Dolphins heading to Carolina to take on the Panthers?
So I think that one of the main reasons that the Panthers were willing to trade Kelvin Benjamin, and one element that has been missing from their offense, has been explosive pass plays. They really have not been able to generate them, and Cam Newton is a big arm thrower, and they were able to generate them in that Detroit game, but beyond that, they really have struggled to create big plays in the passing game, and that's why they wanted to get Curtis Samuel, who runs a 4.3 140. They wanted to get him more involved, maybe a little bit more Russell Shepard. He also can run really well. Devin Funchess is more of that big possession target, but I think that they felt like that he was redundant with Kelvin Benjamin. They wanted to get more speed on the field to create more big plays. So I'll be looking to see if they can get a little bit more out of Curtis Samuel this week. In their last game, he was 75% of the snaps, but wasn't really productive. And I mean, he's a 21-year-old, hybrid player who is still learning the game. And he was a second-round pick, and he missed a ton of time in training camp and the preseason due to injuries. But now is his time, and especially against a Dolphins pass defense that entered the week ranked 30th in Football Outsiders pass defense DVOA. They've given up the second highest completion rate in the NFL, the third highest passer rating in the NFL. I think the Panthers believe that they will be able to create some big plays in the passing game in this game. And then, will the Dolphins be able to slow down Cam Newton as a runner? Because as typically happens with the Panthers, they start out the season trying to limit Cam as a runner. Again, relearn that he's just not as effective when he isn't running. So they've kind of given in, and he's got 9+ scrambles in 4 straight games entering this one. So I think the offensive edges are really on the Panthers side, and it'll just be up to them to capitalize on them.
Yeah, I am interested as well as to see how Cam Newton runs the football in this game. I think that should be a pretty interesting element to the game tonight. What was one of your biggest surprises this weekend? I talked about a few on the show earlier that I was just shocked with. I mean, the Bills' offense was one of them for me, but there was a number of pretty surprising performances this week. What was one for you that you can highlight?
Yeah, there were a lot of surprises this week. I mean, it was a crazy week. Like, I did not think that I did particularly. Like, I don't look at my winnings all day on DFS sites, and at the end of the day, I do look at them. And I was surprised that I did as well as I did because I thought I got so much wrong, but everyone got this week wrong. So I wound up doing just fine on the week because just so many things occurred that were unexpected, and there will be weeks like that throughout the year. But this was one of those weeks. For me, I think that the biggest surprise, and now it was again another team coming off of a bye, and we've talked about how teams coming off the bye tend to perform less in line with their usual norms and more in like a volatile manner. And that was the Steelers. The Steelers I expected to have much more offensive success in Indianapolis than they did. They were one of these teams that it just seemed like they were sleepwalking coming off of their bye. And, Ben really started slow, and they did have running game success early in the game, but then they, kind of didn't have as much success. Rashawn Melvin was all over Antonio Brown, and Rashawn Melvin has been a breakout player in the Colts secondary this year. And then as the game progressed, they finally sort of like got into a groove in the passing game. But I expected them to have much more success right off the bat. And, I mean, they easily could have lost that one. Their kicker missed a bunch of kicks. It was a very non-crisp performance. And I think you could also say that the Steelers certainly have a tendency to play down to their competition. But on Sunday morning, this was a super popular over game. I mean, the over, the total on the game was pushed up toward, I think it reached 47, and it had been as low as 43 earlier in the week. So that was a huge move, and that really didn't even come close to hitting in a 20-17 game.
No, that didn't. I definitely saw that move. I watched it. I know some of the guys that were on it, and my model didn't agree with it, but hey, it was once again, we had scoring from a Colts game, and you're thinking that the other team might be contributing. The Colts are the underdogs, and the Colts are the ones leading these points on the board and getting up there first. I'm really impressed with Brissett. I think he's doing really well. But you're 100% right with the Steelers. Were they looking ahead to this Thursday night game against the Tennessee Titans? Were they just still on vacation time? I mean, they're a hard bunch to figure out, and I think the reason is coaching. You can't tell me that it's not Tomlin's responsibility to get this team ready, and time again, sometimes they're on the road, sometimes they're at home, like against the Jaguars. They lay eggs. Sometimes it relates to coaching decisions, other times it relates to performance decisions and output. They're just a team that I think is very poorly coached from that perspective. What is one prediction that you nailed that you felt really good about? I can guess what I think you're going to say. I'll see because I haven't talked with you, but you were really all over that New York Giants game, specifically Selleck, the tight end, and he caught that tremendous. And what was the guy who didn't even try to tackle him? The cornerback who just came back from the Giants. But yeah, he performed great. So I don't know if that's the one you're going to call out, but what's one performance you got that you really loved?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that game. So there were two games that I liked that were bad team shootouts or games between bad teams that I thought had a chance to be higher scoring. One of them, of course, was Tampa Bay Jets, and that was just a complete disaster. I mean, first of all, both defenses played really well. The Bucs defense really came alive against the Jets, and I mean, the Bucs defense hadn't played well all season.
Do you think that was a personnel thing, with players returning, or do you think that they just matched up really well with them with the game plan?
I think that it was probably a combination of a lot of things. The Jets really struggled to pass protect, and the Bucs finally got all their guys healthy, especially up front. Gerald McCoy was a beast in that game. And the Bucs just kind of rose up. They had been a team that people in the media were saying had quit, and I think that they kind of came together and rallied around that. And that was by far the best game that they played all year.
I think sometimes,
especially defensively. Yeah,
definitely. And I think sometimes, and I overlooked this because I like that game over the total as well. I thought there was going to be some points there. My model was right around 45 or so. And so going over 41.5, I wasn't thinking there's going to be a 33-30 type shootout, but I thought it would hit that total. Sometimes when a team is without their starting quarterback, the rest of the team rallies around them. And in certain cases, it's the other offensive players, the offensive line, the run game steps up. But in the Bucs case, it seemed like it was their defense that stepped up, thinking that, hey, Fitzpatrick may not score a lot here. We've got to shut these guys down.
Yeah, so there were two games that liked that, and that was the one where I, big fail on that one. But then the other one that I really liked was the San Francisco 49ers or San Francisco Giants game. I liked that it had a lot of pace to it. The 49ers were number 1 in the NFL in offensive pace. The Giants were number 6 in the NFL in offensive pace. And I mean, I thought I leaned toward the Giants winning. So I didn't have a great beat on the outcome of the game, but I liked it to produce, more fantasy points than you would think a typical game involving two teams that had one win at midseason might produce. And so we were able to get a good game out of Garrett Selleck, who I played in cash in DFS at the minimum price, and he bailed me out of, the reason that I played him in cash was to get Antonio Brown, and he didn't do anything. So that didn't even really work out, but he did bail me out of, some decisions that did not work out that had bad outcomes. And then Eli Manning entering this game tonight, he is a top 10 fantasy quarterback on the week. CJ Beathard is the number 3 fantasy quarterback on the week. Sterling Shepard went nuts, and he was a guy that I had in almost all my daily fantasy lineups. Evan Ingram had a real solid game. So it was just a good game to have a lot of exposure to in daily fantasy, and certainly to be on for the over.
Yeah, and what was the 49ers player's name who caught that deep pass and then it revealed afterwards about their baby?
Yeah, Marquise Goodwin.
Yeah, Marquise Goodwin. Shout out to him. Obviously, he's probably not watching this, but man, that's got to be so tough. I think you have a daughter. I think she's right around my daughter's age.
Yep.
My daughter's 8, and it's having and I've got a son who's 3, and losing a child is like the most difficult thing to even imagine. So yeah, that had to have been very tough, and also really cool experience for him to play and to have that happen. You do realize that these guys are real people going through real things. And I mean, when we all played sports growing up, we had things going on in our life that playing on the field was like a release from that. So that was pretty cool to watch him go through that. Obviously, hope that they can deal with this difficult time well together as a family. Evan, what was the team or player that you thought fell short, but you think is going to bounce back, whether it's this week or, in the future, the rest of the season, somebody who didn't live up to expectations, but might get the job done pretty soon?
So this AFC is still wide open. I mean, there's only a couple of good teams in the AFC. There's a bunch of good teams in the NFC, but there are a lot of openings for teams to get on a run and finish strong and sneak into a wild card spot. And I think that, I would not necessarily predict or pick, that the Broncos would do that. But as you mentioned earlier in the show, they have a very nice schedule the rest of the way, particularly in terms of opposing offenses. And it starts this week, and they are going to face, after kind of getting embarrassed. I mean, I don't know if you saw the rant that Derek Wolf, their stud defensive end.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
They're players that have a lot of pride. I mean, and they can look left for dead for 1 week or even 3 or 4 weeks, and they can get a good matchup, especially in a home game, and they can really respond. And I think that the Bengals are going to have a lot of trouble trying to protect, I think, against this Broncos defensive front. I would say that the defensive front for the Broncos has maybe even been the most disappointing aspect to their team entering the season. We probably all thought they were going to struggle offensively, but we thought that they would be able to create pass rush, and their pass rush has been super disappointing. But I think that this Bengals offensive line, the Bengals pass protection group as a unit, that is a unit that can bring to life a pass rush, sort of like the Jets did against the Bucs last week, as we mentioned. And I think that the Broncos can get their pass rush revved up this week against the Bengals and have a big day in fantasy and in real life, et cetera. And the Broncos should be able to get this win.
Yeah, that I 100% agree. I think that is an excellent statement. It's gonna, and plus the Raiders that they play next week, the week after that, it's gonna, this is a team they're really familiar with, and then of course they got the Dolphins and the Jets, two teams from the AFC. So this is definitely a team that could get it going, but they're gonna have to get some consistency from that offense, especially from that quarterback play, to really have a shot. But Derek Wolfe definitely delivered a from the heart take on things. So I 100% agree. Well, we definitely appreciate you joining us tonight, Evan. Thanks again, and we're not gonna catch Evan from for this weekend. He's headed out of town. So safe trip, Evan. Hope you have a great time this weekend, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Warren.
All right, take care. All right, guys. So Evan's hitting the road. So just a couple things just to remind you. If you're interested to ever see what it's like at Sharp Football Analysis with the recommendations and the write-ups and that sort of thing, just head on over there this week, sharpfootballanalysis.com. You can get basically on board just for the NFL this week and check it out at free preview. So definitely make sure to do that. I will be updating the strength of schedule at Sharp Football Stats every single Tuesday night, so that's still going to be happening. So check that out on Tuesday evening. So schedules like this and rest of season, future schedule, future strength of schedule, all that stuff's going to be updated. And in addition, another question somebody asked before on Twitter that I didn't get a chance to answer, but with regard to Sharp Football Stats, if you're ever wondering when I update things, I'll just give you a high-level schedule right now. Yeah, it goes up all at once. I'll give you a high-level schedule right now, but here's a trick for you as well to figure out, has this been updated or not for this week? The high-level schedule is every single Sunday night, I update the Sunday afternoon, the Sunday morning, and the Thursday games. And every single Tuesday morning, I will update the Sunday night and the Monday night games. So that's when all the games get in. Though that schedule basically never changes. I'm not sure what they're going to do. I appreciate the prayers for my daughter. Yeah, that's going to be Thursday morning is her procedure. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. I truly do. Hopefully you guys, if you've enjoyed this show, go ahead and give it a retweet. Check it out. And try to share it with as many other people as we can. I will turn this into a podcast. Tonight, I'll turn it into a podcast. What I'll also do is at the beginning, the first 15 minutes of that podcast, I'm going to record live any new takes that I have, things that I saw in the game tonight, and I'll put that up there. So even if you listen to this Periscope, go back in the morning and check out the first 15 minutes of the pod. Then if you saw this Periscope in its entirety, you don't have to listen to the rest of it. All right, guys, I really appreciate it. Thanks for the comments. Hopefully answered a couple questions. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. And we'll be in touch soon. And thanks again for checking it out.
You do know we on national TV, right?
Oh, I thought we were just on FaceTime. I was telling them my big dog.